Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into the world of conflict resolution, but with a twist. We're looking at how it's used in the middle of a war zone. We've got excerpts from Elisa Levy's essay, The Utility of Teaching Conflict Resolution in War, a case study from Iraq. And let me tell you, it's a perspective I never would have considered.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It's like when you think of conflict resolution, you think of peace talks and negotiations after a war, not during.
Exactly. And Levy starts off with this analogy that really grabbed me. She compares teaching conflict resolution in a war zone to teaching farmers in a famine how to plant crops. It seems counterintuitive, right? Like, shouldn't the focus be on just surviving?
It's a striking image.
Yeah.
That really highlights the unexpected nature of this work. And Levy herself admits she went into it with some serious doubts. Not only was the war in Iraq incredibly complex, but she also had to consider how her own identity, American female, Jewish, but be perceived in that environment.
That's a great point. The essay really emphasizes how many layers of conflict were happening in Iraq at that time. It wasn't just a straightforward war between two sides.
Right, you had the U.S.-led coalition against Saddam Hussein's regime, but then you also had intense violence between Sunni and Shia Muslims, not to mention the deeply ingrained tribal conflicts that had been simmering for generations. Levy points out that tribal culture is central to life in Iraq. It influences everything from social structures and education to livelihoods, and even how disputes are traditionally handled.
So it's like trying to untangle a giant knot where the strands keep changing shape. How do you even begin to teach conflict resolution in that kind of chaotic environment?
Well, that's what's so intriguing with Levy's experience. She was working with CHF International, an NGO that was helping Iraqi communities rebuild after the invasion. They had set up these community action groups, or CAGs, made up of local leaders who were responsible for identifying and implementing projects.
Sounds like a great idea in theory, but I bet things didn't always go smoothly.
You got it. These CAGs were constantly running into roadblocks because of all the internal conflicts, disputes over resources, disagreements on priorities, problems with contractors, you name it, they were dealing with it.
And CHF realized that without some way to address these conflicts, the whole rebuilding process would be stalled. So enter conflict resolution training.
Yeah, exactly. Levy and another trainer went to Erbil in northern Iraq to lead a 2-week training session for 23 Iraqi community leaders and CHF staff. They wanted to equip these individuals with the skills and tools they needed to navigate the constant disagreements and find ways to move forward.
But wait, I remember reading about a car bomb that exploded near the training site. Talk about a high-pressure learning environment. Did they even continue the training after that?
It's remarkable, isn't it? On the 4th day, a car bomb detonates near the training site. And you'd think everyone would want to pack up and go home. But the participants insisted on continuing. They saw the training as a lifeline, a way to regain some sense of control in a world that felt incredibly chaotic and unpredictable.
Wow, that really underscores how critical they felt these skills were. But teaching conflict resolution in a war zone must require a different approach than, say, teaching it in a corporate setting. What did Levy learn from this experience?
She outlines 6 key lessons that were crucial to the success of the training. First, she realized that abstract concepts just wouldn't cut it. These individuals needed practical tools they could apply immediately to the very real and urgent problems they were facing.
That makes sense. So instead of theoretical frameworks, they focused on strategies to deal with things like unfinished water pipes, stalled road construction, and those conflicts with contractors you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. They had to address the immediate crises that were impacting people's daily lives. The second lesson was about cultural flexibility. Levy talks about how traditional Iraqi culture, especially in tribal settings, doesn't necessarily embrace the Western idea of win-win solutions.
I can see how that could be a challenge. How did they handle that?
Well, it required a lot of sensitivity and adaptation. Levy even tells a story about a Mukhtar, a village leader, who asked if he could use these negotiation skills on his own son. It shows how deeply ingrained these cultural norms are.
It sounds like navigating those cultural differences was a constant balancing act.
Absolutely. And it brings us to the third lesson, which Levy calls ideological commitment. CHF was very intentional about selecting participants who were already dedicated to improving their communities. These weren't just people in positions of authority. They were individuals who were actively working to make things better, even in the midst of a war.
So it wasn't enough to just have the right skills. They also needed a genuine desire to build peace. That makes me think about the participants themselves. Did Levy talk about the challenges of getting people from different backgrounds and perspectives to work together?
She did, particularly when it came to the role of women. Empowering women in a patriarchal society like Iraq presented its own set of challenges. Levy talks about the importance of creating safe spaces for women to share their perspectives and the need to address the power imbalances between men and women.
It sounds like they were walking a tightrope, trying to promote gender equality without alienating participants who might hold more traditional views. How did they manage that?
One of the things they did was pair men and women together to co-teach the conflict resolution curriculum. This not only ensured that women's voices were heard, but it also challenged traditional gender roles and demonstrated the power of collaboration between men and women.
That's a brilliant strategy. It tackles the issue head-on while also modeling the kind of cooperative behavior they were trying to encourage. So you've got immediate applicability, cultural flexibility, ideological commitment, and gender sensitivity. What were the last two lessons Levy highlighted?
The fifth lesson focuses on the power of peer teaching. Instead of just delivering a pre-packaged curriculum, they had the participants design and teach their own conflict resolution modules.
That sounds risky. Wouldn't it have been more effective to have experienced trainers leading the sessions?
You might think so, but Levy found that having the participants take ownership of the curriculum made the learning much more impactful. They were able to adapt the material to their specific cultural context and draw on their own experiences, which made it more relatable and relevant to their peers.
That makes a lot of sense. It's one thing to learn about conflict resolution in the abstract, but it's another thing entirely to see how it can be applied to the very real challenges you're facing in your own community.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about that last lesson?
The final lesson, and this one might seem obvious, is the importance of time on the ground. In a war zone, things are constantly changing. There are security concerns, logistical challenges, and unexpected events that can disrupt even the best laid plans. Levy emphasizes the need to be flexible, adaptable, and responsive to the ever-changing realities of the environment.
So being able to think on your feet and adjust to unforeseen circumstances was essential. I can only imagine the kind of unexpected situations they must have encountered. These 6 lessons paint a vivid picture of the challenges and complexities of teaching conflict resolution in a war zone. But what about the impact? Did the training actually make a difference? Did those CAGs manage to overcome their conflicts and move forward with their projects?
That's the question, isn't it? And the answer seems to be a resounding yes. Within 6 months of the training, each of the participant pairs had successfully presented their own conflict resolution modules to their fellow community members, and all of the CAGs had progressed to the second phase of CHF's program, which focused on health and income generating initiatives.
So it sounds like the training did have a tangible effect on their ability to work together and make progress on these important projects.
It wasn't just a feel-good exercise. It actually helped them overcome those roadblocks and move forward. And it didn't stop there. CHF recognized the value of what they had accomplished and hired a full-time training specialist to provide ongoing support to the CAG members. They also published a training manual based on the curriculum the participants had developed and shared it with other CAGs throughout Iraq.
That's amazing. So the impact extended far beyond those initial 23 participants. They essentially created a ripple effect, spreading these conflict resolution skills throughout the country. It really makes you wonder how things might have unfolded differently if those CAGs hadn't received this training.
It's an interesting thought experiment. Could those communities have still made progress on their rebuilding efforts without those conflict resolution skills?
Maybe.
Maybe. But it seems likely that the process would have been much more difficult and potentially less successful.
Right, they might have been bogged down by infighting, mistrust, and an inability to find common ground. Levy's experience really challenges the assumption that you have to wait until a war is over to start focusing on conflict resolution and peace building.
Exactly. It flips the script and suggests that addressing those underlying conflicts during wartime might actually be more effective. And certainly more urgent. It's like providing those communities with the tools they need to start healing and rebuilding while the conflict is still raging around them.
That's such a powerful image. Okay, so we've explored Levy's 6 lessons and seen the tangible impact the training had on the CAGs. But I'm curious to hear your take on the bigger picture. What does Levy's experience in Iraq teach us about conflict resolution in general?
Well, for one thing, it challenges this common misconception that conflict resolution is all about finding some perfect win-win solution. where everyone walks away happy. Levy's experience shows that it's often messy, culturally specific, and requires a deep understanding of the power dynamics at play. Sometimes just getting people to the point where they can have a productive conversation is a huge accomplishment.
So instead of searching for some ideal outcome, it's more about creating a process where people can communicate effectively, address their concerns, and find ways to move forward, even if it's not perfect. I can definitely see how that applies to conflicts outside of war zones as well.
Absolutely. And it highlights the importance of starting small. You don't have to solve the entire conflict at once. Sometimes just addressing those smaller, more manageable issues can create a sense of momentum and possibility that can then ripple outwards.
That's a really encouraging message. It means that even in the most challenging situations, there's always something we can do to make a positive impact.
Exactly. Another important takeaway from Levy's experience is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to conflict resolution. What worked in Iraq might not work in another context. It's crucial to be adaptable, to tailor your approach to the specific culture, the specific conflict, and the specific needs of the people involved.
That makes perfect sense. Context is everything.
Yeah.
But it also raises a question about the role of outsiders in conflict resolution. Levy herself acknowledges that her own identity could have been a source of tension. How do we balance the need to help with the potential for cultural insensitivity or even harm?
It's a delicate balance, for sure. And there are no easy answers. But I think Levy's experience underscores the importance of humility, cultural sensitivity, and a willingness to listen and learn from the people we're trying to help.
So instead of imposing our own ideas or solutions, it's more about creating a space where people can find their own solutions, drawing on their own knowledge and experiences. That resonates with the idea of empowering local communities to be the drivers of their own peace-building processes.
Exactly. Levy's experience shows that lasting solutions come from within. Outsiders can play a supporting role, but ultimately, it's up to the community itself to decide what kind of future they want to build and how they're going to get there.
That's such an important point. It's about recognizing that people who are directly affected by conflict are often the best equipped to find solutions that work for them.
It's about respecting their agency and their expertise.
Yeah.
And it's about understanding that real, sustainable peace building is a long-term process that requires patience, commitment, and a deep belief in the possibility of positive change.
Okay, so we've talked about the need to be culturally sensitive, the importance of empowering local communities, and the idea that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to conflict resolution. But I'm curious to hear what this all means for our listeners. We're not in a war zone, but we all encounter conflict in our daily lives. How can we apply these lessons to our own personal experiences?
That's a great question. And I think it's important to remember that the principles of conflict resolution are universal. They apply just as much to a disagreement with a family member or a colleague as they do to a war between nations.
So even though the scale might be different, the underlying dynamics are often the same. We all have to navigate differences of opinion, manage our emotions, and find ways to communicate effectively when things get heated.
Exactly. And one of the most important things we can learn from Levy's experience is that conflict doesn't have to be destructive. It can actually be an opportunity for growth, understanding, and positive change. It's all about how we choose to approach it.
So instead of avoiding conflict or letting it escalate into something bigger, we can learn to see it as a chance to learn, to grow, and to strengthen our relationships.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to have all the answers. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply listen, validate the other person's perspective, and create a space for dialogue and understanding.
That's such a valuable reminder. It's easy to get caught up in our own point of view and forget that the other person also has valid feelings and needs.
It's about shifting our mindset from I'm right, you're wrong, to let's try to understand each other's perspective and find a solution that works for both of us.
That resonates with me. It reminds me of that quote by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
It's a powerful message of hope and agency. We all have the power to be peace builders in our own way, starting with our own relationships, our own communities, and our own spheres of influence.
I love that. So even if we're not mediating peace talks in a war zone, we can still make a difference by practicing those same skills of empathy, communication, and collaboration in our everyday interactions.
Absolutely. And who knows, those small acts of peace building might just have a ripple effect that extends far beyond what we can imagine.
This has been an incredibly thought-provoking deep dive. It's really shifted my perspective on conflict resolution. It's not just about ending wars. It's about empowering people, building resilience, and creating a more peaceful and just world, even in the most challenging circumstances.
I completely agree. It's a reminder that even small acts of peace building can have a profound impact.
And that we all have a role to play in creating a more peaceful world. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you, our listeners. What stuck out to you from Levy's experience? What are you going to take away from this conversation and apply to your own life? We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can share them with us on social media or on our website.
We're always eager to hear from our listeners and continue the conversation.
And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive. We hope this sparked some curiosity and maybe even inspired you to explore the world of conflict resolution a little further. Until next time, keep diving.
As we wrap up our deep dive into conflict resolution in wartime Iraq, I keep finding myself wondering about the long-term impact of that training. What happened to those Iraqi community leaders after they left that training room?
It's a question that lingers, isn't it? What were their lives like once they went back to their communities, back to that chaotic and uncertain environment? Did those skills they learned actually make a difference in their daily struggles?
Right. Did those conflict resolution strategies help them navigate the ongoing challenges of rebuilding their lives in their communities in the aftermath of war?
I'd be curious to know how they adapted those skills to the ever-changing political and social landscape of Iraq. The country has continued to face complex conflicts, and I imagine those community leaders were on the front lines, trying to hold things together and create a better future for themselves and their families. Absolutely. And I think about the women who participated in the training. Did they see a shift in their own roles within their communities? Did the training empower them to become more active leaders and advocates for peace?
That's such an important point. Women often bear the brunt of conflict, but they also possess incredible resilience and a deep understanding of what it takes to build and sustain peace. It would be fascinating to hear their stories and learn from their experiences.
This deep dive has left me with so much to think about. It's not just about the mechanics of conflict resolution. It's about the power of human connection, the willingness to bridge cultural divides, and the unwavering belief in the possibility of a better future, even in the most challenging of circumstances.
Levy's experience serves as a powerful reminder that building bridges of understanding and empathy is essential, especially when we're faced with conflict. It's about recognizing our shared humanity, finding common ground, and working together towards a more peaceful and just world.
And it all circles back to that central question we've been exploring. Can we truly teach peace in the midst of war? Based on Levy's experience, it seems like the answer is a cautious but hopeful yes.
It's not easy. It's not a guaranteed solution. And it certainly doesn't erase the devastating impact of war. But it does suggest that planting those seeds of peace, even while the storm is raging, can make a difference. It can give people hope, equip them with tools for navigating conflict, and empower them to rebuild their lives and communities.
That's such a powerful image, and it reminds us that peace building is not just something that happens after the fighting stops. It's an ongoing process, a commitment to creating a more just and equitable world, one step at a time, even when those steps are taken amidst chaos and uncertainty.
And it's a process that we can all be a part of, no matter where we are or what challenges we face.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We hope this sparks some curiosity and maybe even inspired you to explore the world of conflict resolution a little further. Until next time, keep diving.